Hey, everybody. I'm Allison Gill. Welcome to The Breakdown. And again, thanks to the Midas Touch Network for hosting this show. I really appreciate the platform. So, massive failure for U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro in the District of Columbia this past Friday, as a federal judge, Judge Boseberg, has thrown out her subpoenas when she subpoenaed the Federal Reserve Board, the chair, Jerome Powell, in the ongoing criminal investigation into him. Now, it's just absolutely humiliating, this loss for her. And it comes on the heels of a string of losses for her, which continued later Friday, and we'll get into that. But Friday afternoon, she lost it at the podium during a press conference. She absolutely broke down. She came completely unhinged, stormed out of the briefing room when asked about her string of multiple embarrassing losses before judges and grand juries and trial juries. Now, Katie Phang is going to join me today to discuss this on today's episode of The Breakdown. Hey, Katie, how are you?
Oh, well, it is Friday the 13th. For me personally, it's been a good day. But for somebody like Jeanine Pirro, I think, is it Jason? Was that Friday the 13th? Is that who the character was? Jason came along and decided to hack at a box of wine Piro's run as a U.S. attorney for D.C.
Yes, she had a very, very bad Friday the 13th, a very bad, no good Friday the 13th. And the whole thing kicked off with an unsealing. The unsealing happened on Friday the 13th about an issue that had been going on behind closed doors and came to a head on March 11th, which I believe was Wednesday of last week. And in this unsealed filing, which was part of Judge Box of Wine's loss, right? Because the DOJ didn't want to unseal this embarrassment, but Boseberg ordered it unsealed. And he opens with this. Let me put this up for you. It says, quote, Jerome Too Late Powell has done it again. He's too late and actually too angry, too stupid, and too political to have the job of Fed Chair. He's costing our country trillions of dollars. Put another way, too late is a total loser, and our country's paying the price, unquote. That is one of at least 100 statements that the president or his deputies have made attacking the chair of the Federal Reserve and pressuring him to lower interest rates. So, Katie, he just opens right up with Trump quotes, with evidence that's before him.
Yeah. And, Allison, he goes on, right, to say the following, which I thought was the next logical analysis on this, right? He says, perhaps it comes as no surprise then that the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office has recently opened a criminal investigation into Powell. It's served 2 subpoenas on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, seeking records about recent renovations of the board's buildings and testimony that Powell delivered to Congress that briefly discussed those renovations. The board has now responded with a motion to quash, contending that the subpoenas are merely part of a game plan to pressure Powell to bend to the president's wishes or to get rid of him. The case thus asks, did prosecutors issue those subpoenas for a proper purpose? The court finds that they did not. There is abundant evidence that the subpoena's dominant, if not sole purpose, is to harass and pressure Powell either to yield to the president or to resign and make way for a Fed chair who will.
My goodness.
Come on, right?
Pretty straightforward from Judge Boseberg, who, by the way, is a pretty no-nonsense judge when it comes to issues like this. He's there. He sits on the D.C. Circuit, the federal bench. And, he's actually, full disclosure, presiding over one of my DOJ FOIA cases right now. So I don't want to get too much into my thoughts about this particular judge. But you and I both have covered him pretty extensively, especially in the past year and a half or so. And then going back even further in the Biden administration, when he was providing oversight to the grand juries as the chief judge on the circuit when Donald Trump was being investigated. So Trump already does not like Judge Boseberg.
Yeah, and to refresh people's recollection, we first kind of became familiar with Judge Boseberg for Trump term 2.0 when he was and he remains one of the judges dealing with one of Kilmar Abrego Garcia's cases. If you will recall, he's the one who ordered the Department of Justice to bring Kilmar back after the DOJ violated his orders, instructing them to turn the planes around that had already left for CICOT, the terror prison down in El Salvador that we are paying millions of dollars to Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, to be able to run and house deportees. So Judge Boseberg was one of the first, if not the first, Allison, to really stand in the breach and say, not on my watch. And he's also one of the first federal judges to order contempt proceedings to move forward. Now, an appellate court kind of put the kibosh on it a little bit, but look, this is the type of judge who wants to call balls and strikes as they are in fairness, but he also calls bullshit when he sees it, and he sees it here.
Yeah, and Pam Bondi tried to file a judicial complaint against Judge Boseberg, right. But she refused to attach the document at the heart of it because it was a document that came from a private judicial conference. And she also didn't want to admit she had that document because she's not supposed to have it. And so
because it was a private judicial conference.
So it was all transferred to a judge in the Sixth Circuit who dismissed it like within 2 weeks. And we didn't learn about that until much, much later. So they've been going after this judge for a while. Now, Boseberg concludes in this newly unsealed memorandum saying, a mountain of evidence suggests that the government served these subpoenas on the board to pressure its chair into voting for lower interest rates or resigning. On the other side of the scale, the government has produced essentially zero evidence to suspect Chair Powell of a crime. Indeed, its justifications are so thin and unsubstantiated that the court can only conclude that they're pretextual. The court therefore finds that the subpoenas were issued for an improper purpose and will quash them. It will also unseal redacted versions of the motion to quash, related briefing, and this opinion. That's that second part, Katie, that I was talking, the second loss, the 1-2 punch for Jeanine Pirro today, because not only she's known about this for a couple days, but she didn't hold her press conference until Friday when this was unsealed, and she lost her bid to keep this whole embarrassing ordeal under seal as well. And like I said, shortly after this ruling was unsealed, Jeanine Pirro gave a press conference. Katie, she lost her shit. She absolutely lost her shit.
Did she have any marbles left to lose is really the question. But yeah, she had, what are the kids calling it this day, Allison? She had a crash out on global television. She was crashing out with the best of them, my friend.
Yeah, so let's watch this clip. We're going to show a couple of clips of this press conference here. And in this particular clip, she talks about, her perception of how the criminal justice system works. Let's watch.
This is the antithesis of American justice. Exonerating anyone without any records, without an investigation or question is not how our criminal justice system works. This judge has put himself at the entrance door to the grand jury, slamming that door shut, irrespective of the legal process, and thus preventing the grand jury from doing the work that it does.
Is that how the criminal justice system works, Katie?
I don't think. No. No. And to refresh people's recollection again, this is not a woman who is new, right? This is I guess we're supposed to respect our elders, Allison, but this lady's been around for a long ass time. Mm-hmm. Recall, she was a district attorney in New York. I forget the county, for a long ass time. So she's been around the judicial system. She also knows it well. I think it was her ex-husband who got indicted. So she even knows that part of the system, Allison. And she knows how prosecutions are supposed to work. And so this idea of how she thinks it's supposed to be is most certainly not how our judicial system works.
Right. No. And what she was talking about there, about the judge not being able to, a judge should be able to do this. She's completely wrong. And I guess she didn't read Boseberg's ruling? Because he addresses that very point in his ruling. He says, while the grand jury subpoena power is broad, it is accordingly not unlimited. As relevant here, a unanimous chorus of sister circuits agrees that the court may quash subpoenas that the government has issued for an improper purpose. So, no, sorry, Jeanine, saying that the judge can't do this and he's just doing it because he's an activist judge. Boseberg actually puts a ton of sister district case law in his ruling, which I guess she just didn't see or saw and decided she was still mad about it. I'm not sure.
Well, it kind of makes you wonder, too, who are the other prosecutors that are working on this with her? Because it's not like, let's be frank here, right? In the interest of some inside baseball here, she's not the only prosecutor in that office, right? So she has other people working on this. So did people tell her that this is the status of the law and she didn't give a shit? Did people not tell her this is the status of the law because they wanted her to look like shit? Did people tell her this is the status of the law and she said, I think that I could do it anyway because I'm the United States Attorney for DC? I mean, that's possible because she does go on, Allison, in her crash out to basically say, because she feels like she can prosecute people, she can. She just wants to make sure that the law hasn't been violated because, she's really looking out for the best of us. So maybe we should take a listen to what she had to say then.
To present evidence, and I can do so when I can merely on the suspicion that the law is being violated, or even just because I want assurance that it's not. I'm not in those lanes. And I will not allow myself or my staff to be in those lanes.
Oh, okay. No. Also, no. And also, Boseberg addresses that in his ruling. And before I get to that, Katie, you said what other prosecutors are working with her. On the issue of whether or not the court can quash subpoenas, the DOJ lawyers from her office agreed in the hearing, in the hearing about this, that they all sort of, yes, we agree with that standard. That the court.
So they conceded it? They conceded it? Oh my God.
They conceded it. But here about going on fishing expeditions, Boseberg addresses that in his ruling. He says, quote, for one, prosecutors may not use the grand jury, quote, to engage in arbitrary fishing expeditions or to, quote, select targets of investigations out of malice or an intent to harass. And that is a citation directly from a case called US v. Enters, R. Enters, Inc. So that was also addressed.
And what's outrageous to me is that she is one of how many prosecutors in the Trump regime, federal prosecutors from Alina Habba, who, footnote, got divorced just recently, apparently. So she's on the prowl. Alina Habba, Lindsay Halligan, Ed Martin, Jeanine Pirro, that lawyer, the U.S. Attorney in Nevada, the U.S. Attorney in L.A., Bill Asaley. Look,
Sarcone,
right. Yeah, exactly. They all are thinking that they're allowed to do these things, whether it's the fishing expedition that is illegal and prohibited, whether it's the pursuit of a case within which you have no probable cause. And they think that just because they're a U.S. attorney, that either grand jurors are going to capitulate, criminal defense lawyers are going to being cowed into submission, and judges are just going to turn a blind eye. This is truly a big slap in the Trump administration's face, specifically because this has to do with Jerome Powell, who's had a huge target on his back, just like James Comey and Tish James.
Yeah, and it's no wonder that Pamela Joe, your good friend and mine, as you call her, Pamela Joe, wants to have a new rule where she gets to step in and suspend any state bar association investigations into Department of Justice lawyers for running afoul of ethics rules or violating their oaths and what they're supposed to be doing. She's like, oh no, we can investigate ourselves. We don't need the state bar association to do that. Meanwhile,
just like they're policing themselves on the Epstein files. Really?
Yeah.
They do such a good job of that.
Oh, and after you've completely gutted all of the watchdog and oversight, Office of Personnel Responsibility, et cetera, she's gutted all those. She's fired the ethics attorney. She hasn't replaced him. But we can totally take care of this ourselves. It's absolutely no wonder she wants to give immunity to DOJ lawyers when they continue to do this. Like Jeanine Pirro. Let's watch this because somebody more of the breakdown continues here on the breakdown, which is why I called it this, by the way. That's one reason I named this show, The Breakdown. But here she is when she was asked about additional failures this particular horrible failure is coming on the heels of, namely her failure to indict the 6 members of Congress who created that video telling active duty service members they don't have to obey and, in fact, have an obligation to disobey unlawful orders. Watch.
Do you think that your office's failure to attempt to prosecute 6 members of Congress?
I'm not here to talk about 6 members of Congress. I'm here to talk about the fact that the grand jury has a job. They look at evidence. They decide whether they want to indict. If they don't indict, so be it. And if you want to know what the judge thinks, go ask him.
I'm not here to talk about the 6 service members.
I mean, and she's like, I don't know if she's destroying equipment, if she's slamming stuff down. I mean, remember she was on Fox News, right? So she knows her way around mics. She knows her way around audio equipment, but listen, maybe it was early happy hour for her. I have no idea, but you know how embarrassing it is for this lady to be called out like that, to have reporters and others asking her these questions? It's really humiliating for her.
Yeah. And we have the microphone and the bonking around came again as she stormed out at the very end. I don't even know how to describe this clip. I just have to show it to you. Watch.
The process should have been allowed to run its course, and it wasn't. And shame on them. Oh, cut it out. Do you know how many convictions we've got? Cut it out. You're in one lane. We have cleaned up this city. Oh, yeah, historic, really? I'll tell you what's historic. What's historic is that I prosecute everything other than 10% of the cases, where the United States attorney before me didn't prosecute 67% of the cases. That's what's historic. I'm willing to take a not guilty. I'm willing to take a no true bill, because I'll take all the crimes and put them in. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the time we have.
She just flipped out. She's like, look, don't you tell me. I'll take not guilty. I'll take a no bill. Our friend Anna Bauer was like, girl, we know. Like on social media.
It's like a crash out on steroids. It's amazing because they keep on taking the L on this, right? And it's across the board. Let's think honestly, Allison, I think the only thing they've been successful on is, I think it's Minneapolis so far, right? I kind of feel like that's really like the only one that they've actually really kind of gotten something kind of through the net, which is the indictments against people like Don Lemon and Georgia Fort, which are all bullshit, but other people as well, right? I feel like that's the only indictment they've really actually been successful on so far when it's come to political targeting, political intimidation. I could be wrong, but I feel like they just keep on taking the L on all of this.
A couple of those from the Broadview facility in Illinois, a couple of those charges were dismissed this past week. I think Minneapolis, you're right. I don't think they're going to get very far when it actually comes to, maybe she got it past a grand jury. She's not going to get it past a petit jury. I don't think in the cases of like Don Lemon and Fort, Georgia Fort, et cetera.
Right, you get there. Yeah.
But there is the successful so far indictment of John Bolton, but that investigation began under the Biden administration. So they're just sort of carrying that football forward.
And you know what, Allison, I'm so glad you brought up John Bolton, because I feel like this needs to be said. We need to always look at cases on a case-by-case basis. And we need to look at the facts of cases on a case-by-case basis. Two things can be true at the same time. John Bolton could have violated the law and at the same time be prosecuted by a DOJ that sucks. But it doesn't mean that there wasn't something there. Does that make sense?
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Which is why in this instance, though, the Jerome Powell subpoenas and other indictments a la James Comey, Tish James and others, like doesn't necessarily mean that, there's something there if an indictment is returned or if a case is being prosecuted. But we need to be careful about not painting a huge brush, because there are some serious questions about the John Bolton stuff.
I agree. So I think those charges are actually, they could stick, and they don't look good for John Bolton.
They're not.
But after, we're not done, because after Jeanine Pirro bonked around on the microphone, kicked the podium, and ran out of the room, something else happened. She dismissed some other charges. Katie, what they took another L after that press conference. What was it?
So a few months ago, they arrested a veteran, someone who, like you, right? Like somebody that we should be giving so much deference and respect to, people that have served and people that have done so much amazing work as a part of our armed forces. They arrested a veteran for burning a flag across the street from the White House to protest Trump's executive order, which was illegal and unconstitutional. And that executive order did what? It banned flag burning. And it was outrageous that this man got arrested. And he made it very clear as he was burning the flag that he was exercising his constitutional right to be able to burn the flag, to express his disgust, disappointment, and protest and opposition to that EO, that executive order, etc. We all knew this case wasn't going to go anywhere fast. But on the eve of having to file stuff with the court, what does Jeanine Pirro's office do? She ends up basically filing a motion to dismiss, which is tantamount to her dropping the charges against this man.
Yeah. And this Jerome Powell subpoena case is pretty much dead. Now, she said in her press conference, I told you, were you not listening? We're going to appeal this. But having those subpoenas tossed out is probably going to be a pretty steep hill to climb to get that overturned. So we'll see what ends up happening.
His way out too, Allison. What is it? We're in March. Isn't he out in May? I want to say Jerome Powell's out very soon. In fact, his replacement's already been, picked. So Powell's out in a couple of months anyway.
Well, he'll still be on the board, though, right? He'll still have a vote.
Right. He's not the chair.
He won't be the chair. And I think Trump just wants to get rid of his vote altogether, because that's actually evidence against the government in this case, right? The fact that he's not just leaving in May, and that he will continue to have a vote on the board for whether or not to drop interest rates, which is, what Donald Trump wants him to do. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. I don't think the appeal is going to be successful. I think Boseberg's ruling is correct. He cites all the case law in the world. There could be a reason for the Supreme Court to pick it up, because he's quoting sister districts, but Piro's lawyers from her office conceded to that interpretation of what the sister districts have come up with. But we'll obviously follow it, but I texted Katie today. I was like, we have to jump on and talk about this absolute meltdown from Jeanine Pirro, just a complete string of losses. And for her at the end there to be like, look, I don't care. I'll bring any case. I'll just bring it, and it's like, that's against the law. And also, basically, she's saying, look, I'll bring shitty cases all day. I don't care. Like, that's against the federal rules of criminal procedure, is it not, Katie?
Not only are you not supposed to do that, but you also have a ethical obligation. And as a prosecutor, you're held to a higher standard, in fact. And you know what really should give her and everybody in that office some cause for pause, Allison? Ed Martin is now facing formal disciplinary charges from the D.C. bar for conduct that he did while he was the interim U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia before a box of wine got the job. And, he has been a true lapdog for Trump. He was also removed by Todd Blanche as the head of the weaponization working group because he sucked. Martin just couldn't get anything to stick against all of these, quote, enemies of Donald Trump. But all kidding aside, the DC's bar is watching. And these formal ethics charges could impact your ability to practice law. And as I've said time and time again, and I know you've talked about this too, when you eliminate the person's ability to appear as a licensed practitioner in a particular jurisdiction, they cannot go to court. You cannot be in court. You cannot represent clients. You certainly cannot be spreading Donald Trump poison as his lawyer. So if those appellate lawyers are paying attention, if any of those line prosecutors are paying attention, doing something because Box of Wine wants you to do it, which we all know she's only doing it because the orange turd wants her to do it, like that's wrong. And I would legitimately be concerned if I was a federal prosecutor right now, knowing, especially in DC, they're watching and they're observing. Like they didn't have a problem filing these ethics charges against Ed Martin, who still has favored child status in some way with Donald Trump.
Yeah, and that's why Pam Bondi wants to immunize Department of Justice lawyers from state bar associations and the District of Columbia Bar Association, because frankly, they cannot find lawyers to do their illegal shit for them, because lawyers are saying, I don't want to risk my license. I don't want to risk my standing with my state bar or the bar in DC, wherever you happen to be barred. And that's why they're putting out ads on Craigslist for Department of Justice lawyers. That's why they're like, don't worry about your transcripts from college. Just apply. We just need more lawyers. It's because they're trying to find people who are willing to risk their law license, unless, of course, Pam Bondi is somehow successful in her bid to immunize these Department of Justice lawyers, but I don't see that happening.
Your bar license, like I am barred in the state of Florida, so I have a number that is my Florida bar number, and it allows me to practice in the state of Florida. And then my good standing as a member of the Florida bar allowed me admission into federal courts in different jurisdictions, not just Florida. So my ability to practice in federal court is tied to my good standing as a member of the Florida bar. These are state bars. So, and again, not to have to teach federalism to people anymore. I mean, like, and other concepts of state sovereignty, these state bars do their own thing. There is a reason why there's no federal organization telling them what to do, which is why admission requirements are different in California, Florida, Montana, New York. They're all different. They're not uniform. And so that's why Pammy Joe with the bad hair can try. But there's no way in hell the sovereignty of the Florida bar is going to cede ground to her. Now, here's the interesting thing, too. You know, a lot of bar complaints have been brought about Pammy Joe, Todd Blanche, and others in Florida. The Florida bar's disciplinary kind of side has not pursued bar complaints because these are active sitting members of the administration, not because they're scared, but just because in their mind, I mean, at least I think this is the rationale, because they're actively working in these positions, they're not doing it. So this DC complaint is a really big deal because Ed Martin is still an active member of this administration. He's a pretty high ranking guy. So the fact that the DC bar is like, we ain't tolerating the shit. I think other bars have to take notice and do something, because it's almost illogical. It's like, I'm going to wait till Pammy Joe's not, you know, the AG anymore before we take action against her license. Well, can you imagine how much more shit she's going to do in the meantime? Totally doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it also kind of makes me wonder or be a little bit concerned about this administration or this Department of Justice pressuring certain state bar associations from going after Department of Justice lawyers. And then you see a flood of new DOJ attorneys coming in from Texas or Louisiana or whatever bar association they've put under their thumb. Just kind of like how we constantly see mass deportation happening from people are moved to Louisiana and Texas, right? Or just how this administration always likes to file things in the Northern District of Texas where Kaczmarek sits. Like judge shopping. I wonder if we're going to start seeing bar association shopping with this Department of Justice.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Depending upon whether or not, you know, you have bar associations that are capitulating and taking the knee. I mean, look, it's already started from the law firms, right? Private law firms last year, biggie international law firms. And you've seen it happen with companies. You've now seen it happen in other, you know, industry spaces. I wouldn't be surprised. But, you know, I feel like of all the branches, though, it is the judiciary, a la Boseberg, right? A la Paula Zinis, a la a lot of these judges that are like, look, we're not going to let this happen. And they're the ones that have really been, like I said, standing in the breach and saying, we're going to be, we're going to be the guardrail that doesn't exist anywhere else. So I'm kind of grateful for Boseberg. Their lives are threatened. These federal judges. Mm-hmm. Their lives are being threatened just because they actually abide by the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they really are. And that was, by the way, one of the issues that was brought up to Chief Justice John Roberts in that judicial conference by Boseberg that caused Pam Bondi to file the complaint, is the threats that the judges are getting. So that brings us full circle, my friend. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. Everybody, you have to check out Katie's show on the Midas Touch Network. And thanks again to the Midas Touch Network for airing this show. We'll see you next week on The Breakdown.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.